Welcome to the second set of techniques which you'll be able to use in your teaching, and this is one that goes to the heart of teaching, and that is knowing what your students know. So as teachers, it's reasonably easy for us to say something and then, do you understand? And all our students, because they are normal, they will all go or look like they understand, and students are very good at that, but we won't know what they actually know. So instead of going, do you understand? Yeah, we can really know if they know by asking questions about the key concept of the word. This also means that our communication is direct and it's clear, and the students' responses are also direct and clear. So let's imagine we have the word pedestrian, and we want to know if our students know the meaning or the central idea, the core concept of pedestrian. So we ask the question, pedestrians, where do you find them? And we wait. You could go everyone, or you could name a student, and then you get an answer. And hopefully it's something like in the street, on a road, that sort of thing. And you go, good. If you don't get that answer, you know that they don't know the word pedestrian. Yeah. Next key concept is, do they run or do they walk? If you get the answer, they walk, then you know that they know. And also everyone else in the class has learned that pedestrians are in the street and they walk. So nice, simple way of clarifying meaning for your learners and enabling you to know what they actually know. So next one, let's make it difficult. So let's look at a third conditional. So if he had eaten it, he would have got sick. Aha. So for that, we can say, do you understand? Or something else, or we can ask key concept questions. Number one, did he eat it? The answer is, of course, no. Did he get sick? The answer is no. And in those two questions, we have isolated and identified the key concept in a third conditional. It is often said that if you really want to know if you know something, then try to teach it. True, yes. That as teachers, we know that if we're going to go into a classroom and teach something, we've got a lot of homework to do to make sure that our thoughts, that our ideas are correct and clear. Because we know this, we can use the same piece of knowledge in our classroom with our learners. So for example, we teach something. After we've taught it, we set the task. And you can set up the task any way you want to with different partnering, but you set up the task in which one student has got to teach another student what you have taught him. Delightful, isn't it? They do that, tremendously good for the person who's the teacher to clarify their own thoughts, and for the person who is the student to ask questions and perhaps understand more than they would have. And a really good opportunity for you to walk around the classroom and monitor and answer questions to see if your learners have in fact learned what you have taught them. After they've done that, of course, next best task is, if they've learned something, get them to use it. Get them to use it in a paired or group activity. So teach, transfer, and use if you like. When we're teaching something in the classroom, we have to think about how that learning is related to language acquisition. So how do we make our learners be more fluent with the language that they are learning in the syllabus? One of the ways to do that is to make the language as real as possible. So you can have language like, what can you do in the summer? Very useful piece of language, but limited. If after you have taught that language and you drill it, and obviously we're looking in detail at drilling a little bit later, but if you drill that and you drill the question and then you do substitution, so what can you do in the summer, or what can you do in the kitchen? Yeah, what can you do in classroom? That sort of thing. What you're getting in that is an opportunity for your learners to use that language in real life. So after you've taught the target language and you've drilled it, then you give them an opportunity to use that with one another about their own lives. Yeah. So what can you do in your kitchen at home? Yeah. What can you do in your class in the evening? What can you do on Sunday afternoon at your grandfather's? So we take what is the target language, we extend it through drilling, and then we extend it into real life so the learners can choose something that's personally meaningful for them. If you are talking with one of your fellow teachers and you're talking about how to increase your students' fluency, maybe the point that they raise is, how do you find time to do that in the classroom? Obviously, to achieve that is a lot of little things that are to do with your class management and your teaching, so that you can improve the number of opportunities and the amount of time your learners can spend talking with one another. So learners comparing answers is an excellent thing to do and should really be a standard when you set a task. So you set a task, the learners do it, and then you say, okay, with your partners, talk about or compare your answers. You may need to pre-teach some of their language for that, like, what did you get for, I don't think so, maybe it should be, whatever. But there should be some language there that they can use to help their discussions with one another. But what this means is that every time you set a task, then maybe they have a minute or so talking with one another about what they think their answers are. This means they can develop their language skills in discussing it. It also means that they get an opportunity to practice before they may have to answer the question from you. So within our classrooms, opportunities to build fluency come very often. When we set a task, the next thing we do is we say to our learners, please compare your answers. They do that. You can walk around and listen to their thoughts, listen to their ideas, and understand how they're thinking. Then you can ask a student, what did you get? His answer will be fuller and clearer because he or she has had more time to think about it. Let's keep in mind that when we are teaching, our ambitions should be high. And when our learners know that our ambitions are high, that we expect them to be intelligent because they are intelligent, we expect their ideas to be clear because they are clear, we get better learning, we get better outcomes in our teaching, and we get a better outcome in language. So when we give learners opportunities to compare answers, discuss what they think, we're developing their reasoning. They're developing how they explain their position, why they think what they think, and then when you ask them for answers, you're going to get deeper responses. You're going to get more intelligent responses, and that's what you want as a teacher. If you get intelligent responses using the target language, then you really are moving your students towards acquisition. Imagine you meet someone, you haven't seen them for a long time, and they have become a little bit strange. And the first question they say to you is, did you study biology in high school? And you go, yes. And then they say, okay, tell me about mitosis. And you go, oh, because you did study biology in high school and you probably did mitosis, but you need time to think before you can give a reply. Now imagine that you're learning Spanish and that person comes up to you and asks you in Spanish about mitosis and biology in high school. You're for quite a long time. Yeah. We need to bear that in mind when we get our students to think about things. We need to give them time to recall. And when they've recalled something, time to think about it, and then enough time to organize their ideas before they present it in discussion with their friends or other people in the class. So time to think is really important because it gives you the opportunity to drag up memory, to organize it and then deliver it. When you give students time to think, you will find that their ideas are broader, more well thought through, and their fluency is higher. Because if you can give them time to think, then when it comes to actually talking about it, they don't need to spend so much time just searching for words. With the task of thinking, we want some instruction so it's clear what we want our learners to do. So it can be something like take 1 minute to try to remember or recall what we learned yesterday. And remember that this will be a silent time for your kids so that they will need to spend this time in silence recalling. So take 1 minute to think about what we learned yesterday, and then when I say go, tell your partner what you have learned or what you have remembered. So this is a really nice, simple strategy for getting recall, and in that review, in that recall, and that use of language, we're building fluency. When we listen to someone who is speaking with some high level of fluency, we know it's because that in their experience, in their lives, they've had lots of opportunity just hearing and listening to the target language. And that develops a very natural sense of what language sounds like and how it is spoken in all sorts of different contexts. We don't really have that opportunity in the classroom, and we don't really have that opportunity when we're living in a country that is not speaking the language that we want as the mother tongue. One very good way to deal with this as a challenge is through an elegant approach to drilling. And when I say elegant, I don't mean standard drilling, which is the teacher says something and then the children repeat it. That's not very elegant. What I mean is an approach to drilling in which the teacher is very involved in the process, and the teacher's voice is very, very clear, and the teacher maybe uses his hand to show intonation patterns, to make them faster, to make them slower, but using drilling techniques to build fluency and build accuracy is something that you can do in your classroom every day. Drilling is an art form in which the teacher produces a prompt and the learners produce a response. But the response is not a simple copy of the prompt. What we're looking for here is for the learners to respond to prompts from the teacher, and the learners take those prompts and fit them into the target language. So for example, we have the question, where do you live? The learners respond, where do you live? Using that target prompt. And then the teacher says, he. The learners respond, where does he live? The teacher says, she. The learners respond, where does she live? Now what we're doing here, and that can go on obviously to where do they live, where do we live, and so on. What we're doing here is we're not dealing with a single piece of target language. We're dealing with a piece of language which is manipulated by the learners. Questions are good, also answers are good. So you drill a question, you must drill an answer, because in drilling that answer, you're allowing the learners flexibility in responses that they make at a later date. So the teacher moves to, I live in Shanghai. The learners respond, I live in Shanghai. The teacher says she. The learners respond, she lives in Shanghai, and so on. So the teacher could move to another question, which is, what did you do yesterday? Which the learners copy in response. And then, of course, the teacher can say he, she, they, and the learners manipulate that and respond appropriately. Also, the teacher can manipulate that further by not just introducing different subjects, but introducing different times. So the teacher's prompt could be Monday, and the learners respond, what did they do on Monday? And then the teacher drills an answer, they went to table tennis. The learners respond, they went to table tennis. And then the teacher gives an additional prompt, the pool, and the kids reply, they went to the pool. So what we're looking at here in terms of drilling is a prompt, which is a model, and then a manipulation of that prompt designed to develop fluency and accuracy in language use. What we get as an outcome from drilling, and this is not drilling at the dentist, but what we get as an outcome from drilling is flexible memory. We're getting memory of patterns in language, and we're getting memory of patterns for which we have done substitutions. So what are you going to do tomorrow is a nice pattern, but if we don't practice he, she, it, they, my grandfather, my grandmother, learners will not be able to use that fluently or flexibly. So when you do that drilling practice with your substitutions, with your manipulation, learners are developing fluency in their language use, and they're developing a memory of the language pattern. So it's a really excellent way of developing both accuracy and fluency. And just to make that point again, in case it wasn't clear, when you drill a question, you model it, and then you give prompts, and then your students infill the prompts. When you've drilled a question, you drill an answer, and you do substitutions in your answer. And of course, what do you do after that? You set them up in interaction patterns with new partners, and they ask and answer questions with one another. You will find that their questions are flexible and accurate, and their answers are flexible and accurate. If we expect intelligent behavior, we get intelligent behavior. If we expect our students to be simple in their language use, we will get simplicity in their language use. What we want to do is to encourage them to ask us challenging questions. And we want those challenging questions to get harder and harder. And as they ask you challenging questions, you should respond to those questions with a great deal of thought and a great deal of attention. If they have trouble forming the question in English, help them with the formation and respond as well as you can. So you can go for something as simple as, what's that? Yeah. And the kids can ask you, what's that? Now, they can point to things in the classroom, and it's happened to me on a whole number of occasions. When I try to do this, I go, what's that? And then I go, okay, it's your turn, ask me. And of course, very quickly, they discover things I didn't know existed. They will point to some electrical item or part of the ceiling or part of the room or part of clothing and say, what's that? And I don't know. And that's completely okay. You've got to say that. You go, I don't know. Very good question. Now, the answer could be blah, 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 or it could be blah, 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 but I'm really not sure. But you give it as much thought as you can to demonstrate that you're really interested in the challenging questions, that they have provoked thought for you, and you want them to be more thoughtful. So you want intelligent students, get them to ask you intelligent questions, and after they've asked them, get them to ask more and to make it harder. Listening is a vital skill. Through listening, we acquire all sorts of things about the sound of language, the melody of language, and many other things beside. Our little challenge is, of course, that when we are speaking language, we don't listen to the words. We know this. We listen for meaning. That's what we do. We listen for meaning. We don't listen for the words. Now, the challenge when you're learning a new language is, of course, that you need to listen for the words. As a teacher, you can encourage this awareness by saying something and then turning to your class and saying, what did I say? Simple as that. So you could, for example, say to your class, I think I'm going to the beach tomorrow. What did I say? And see what sort of response you can get to that. When you do that, you're encouraging your learners to listen very carefully to what you say all the time. But you're also encouraging them to listen and decode the words. When they're decoding the words, then they're getting a correct picture of the grammar of the language. The first times you do this task with your learners, what did I say? You will be very surprised at how inaccurate they are, how few words they will recognize. And I've done it many, many times with audios, and you will get some students saying, I heard 7 words, another student saying, I heard 11. And of course, there were 9. Yeah. So there's a lot of learning to be done in terms of tuning their ears to what you have said or what the audio produces. But very quickly, with that sort of task practice, they go from quite poor recognition to quite accurate recognition. When they've done that for a little while, yeah, and they're better at it, then when you are getting some feedback from a student and it's reasonably accurate, you can say to the class, what did he say? Or what did she say? The message that you're giving is, of course, I want you to listen to all the communication, but you're also in that message telling students when you speak, try to be clear and accurate. And you're telling the other students when you're listening, try and listen for the meaning and the words. So it's a really good point to finish here, that when we are teaching, remember that listening is one of our most important skills, and we need our learners to focus on not just the meaning, but decoding the words.